My name is Elena Mercer. I'm 33 years old, and the end of my marriage began with a text so casual it almost felt insulting. My husband texted from his work conference saying they were extending the event through the weekend and telling me not to wait up. 3 minutes later, his boss called, asking why he had missed the conference entirely. That was the moment something inside me went cold. I was sitting at my desk when Mason's message came through, bright and affectionate in the effortless way lies often are when someone has told enough of them. Hey babe, conference is going amazing. They added extra workshops for top performers, so I'm staying until Sunday. Don't wait up. Love you. I remember staring at the words love you longer than anything else. Not because they comforted me, because they felt decorative, tacked on, like the final touch on something already rotten. I had already started typing back when my phone rang. Howard, Mason's direct supervisor. For half a second, I thought maybe there had been an accident. Maybe something had happened on the road. Maybe my life was about to split open in a completely different way. I answered too quickly. Hello? Howard sounded concerned, distracted, careful. Elena, sorry to bother you. Is Mason feeling better? We were concerned because he called out sick and missed the conference. It's mandatory, and HR is already making notes for quarterly review. Everything around me seemed to stop. The fluorescent office lights. The hum from the printer across the hall. My own hand around the phone. I stared at the spreadsheet open on my monitor and watched the numbers blur while Howard waited on the other end. Then I said very evenly, "Thanks for the information, Howard. I'll make sure he knows." There was a pause. Then, "Is he okay?" He said it was a stomach issue. "He's fine," I said. "I appreciate the call." I hung up and looked back at Mason's text. Conference is going amazing. No hesitation. No stumble. A polished lie. That was the part that got me first. Not even the cheating. I didn't know that for sure yet. It was how easy it was for him. How naturally he had placed himself in one reality for me and another for his boss, assuming both would hold. I opened Find My Phone. A year earlier, Mason had lost his phone in a mall parking lot, and I had set location sharing up for him because he was hopeless with basic settings and acted like technology had personally betrayed him. We laughed about it at the time. He kissed my cheek in the food court and called me the organized one in the marriage. I guess I was. His location loaded in less than 2 seconds. Rosewood Hotel, 43 minutes away. Not the conference center 3 states over. Not even far enough away for a decent excuse. Just close enough to be sloppy. I leaned back in my chair and felt that coldness settle in deeper. Here's the thing about Mason. He had always believed confidence could substitute for caution. It worked on strangers. On coworkers, sometimes even on friends. He moved through the world like a man who assumed his face, his voice, and his timing could get him out of anything. And usually they did. But people like that get careless when they think they're ahead. He had used our shared card for the hotel. He had left location sharing on. He had forgotten that if he told too many versions of the truth, eventually one would land in my hands. I didn't cry. That still surprises people when I tell the story. But I didn't feel grief first. I felt clarity. It came over me so fast it was almost physical, like a jaw unlocking, like a fogged mirror clearing all at once. I opened our banking app. There it was. Rosewood Hotel pending authorization. 2 guests. I stared at the amount, then at the small gray timestamp underneath it, and something humorless flickered through me. He hadn't even cheated carefully. I called my brother-in-law, Adrian. He was married to my older sister and had spent the last 11 years building a reputation as the kind of divorce attorney people hired when they were finally done being generous. He picked up on the second ring. "Elena?" "Hypothetical question," I said. He was quiet for 1 beat. Then, "No, it isn't." I let out the smallest breath. "If someone wanted to file quickly," I said, "and if that someone had texts, card statements, location history, and a husband at a hotel he claimed not to be in, how quickly could papers be drafted?" A long silence followed. Not confused. Angry. The kind of silence family gives you when they are trying not to make your pain about them. Finally, Adrian said, "How bad is it?" "He's at the Rosewood while telling me he's at a conference in Denver." Another pause. Then, very calmly, "Come by tonight. I'll have something ready." I looked back at my screen. Rows of figures. Quarterly forecasts. Projected loss columns. It struck me then how strange life could be. I was at work reviewing damage estimates while my personal life was quietly becoming one. "Thank you," I said. "Elena?" "What?" "Don't warn him." I swallowed. I wasn't planning to. When I got home, the house was so still it almost seemed to be listening. Mason and I had been married 7 years. No kids. That had been his choice at first. Then our mutual delay. Then one of those things couples stop discussing directly because time starts answering for them. The house was mine from before the marriage. I had bought it years earlier. The mortgage was in my name. The renovations had been paid from my accounts. My retirement savings were separate. The joint checking account we used for groceries and utilities had less than $4,000 in it. Standing in the kitchen, I realized we had not built a life together as much as arranged one side by side. Convenient. Structured. Easy to mistake for solid. I went upstairs and opened the closet. Then I began. Not wrecking. Not throwing his clothes onto the floor. Not performing heartbreak for an empty room. I was methodical. His jackets first. Then his shoes. Then the expensive watch box he kept even though half the watches inside were financed, and one was probably fake. His gym bag. His supplements. His laptop stand from the guest room office. 3 suitcases' worth of clothes. Toiletries. Cufflinks. The framed photo of him and his mother, he insisted made the hallway feel warmer. Everything went neatly into the garage. Lined up. Ordered. Labeled. Not because I was kind. Because I wanted there to be no confusion later. No room for performance. No scene where he could stand in my kitchen and accuse me of madness while stepping over the evidence of his own choices. By 7:30, Adrian had emailed the draft. I printed it at the dining table Mason always said made the house feel too formal unless we had guests. Irreconcilable differences. Immediate separation. Each party retains property held individually prior to marriage, and any assets separately maintained thereafter. Simple. Clean. Almost elegant. I signed where Adrian highlighted in yellow. Then I placed the papers on the kitchen counter. On top, I added a note in black ink. Howard called. He hopes you recover quickly from the stomach bug. I looked at that note for a long time. Then I set my keys beside it and went upstairs for my overnight bag. Everyone should have one. Not because disaster is inevitable, because denial is expensive. I packed 2 blouses, jeans, a charger, toiletries, medication, and the old gray sweater that still smelled faintly like cedar from my sister's guest room closet. By the time Adrian texted me the gate code, the sky outside had gone that deep blue that only lasts a few minutes before full dark. I took one last walk through the house, the living room lamp glowing softly, the kitchen spotless, the bedroom with one side of the closet emptied like a pulled tooth. Nothing looked dramatic enough for the end of 7 years. That felt right somehow. Real endings rarely come with thunder. Sometimes they come with wiped counters and labeled boxes in a garage. I left at 9:14 p.m. Mason called at 10:57. I didn't answer. He called again at 11:06, then 11:19, then 11:31. By midnight, there were 7 missed calls and 3 texts. Hey, are you asleep? Why aren't you answering? Elena, seriously, is everything okay? That last one almost made me laugh. At 12:48 a.m., another text came through. I'm heading home now. I stared at the message in Adrian's guest room with the bedside lamp on low and my overnight bag still unopened on the floor. Heading home, not back to the conference. Not staying until Sunday. Not even bothering to respect his own timeline anymore. He knew, or at least he felt something shifting. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and looked up at the dark ceiling. For the first time that day, I let myself imagine the exact moment he would walk into that house. The silence, the missing things, the papers on the counter, the note, and the awful realization that he had not been caught in a fight. He had been caught by a woman who had finally stopped asking questions and started collecting answers. I didn't really sleep. Every time my phone buzzed against the nightstand, I knew exactly who it was without looking. By the time the sun came up, there were 23 missed calls, 38 texts. They moved through the same predictable cycle: confusion, concern, annoyance, anger, panic. At 7:12 a.m., I picked up the phone, not to answer, just to read. Elena, why aren't you answering? Is something wrong? Did something happen? You're scaring me. This isn't funny. Answer your phone. Then the tone shifted. If this is about the conference thing, I can explain. You're overreacting. It's not what you think. And finally, we need to talk now. I set the phone down and got out of bed. Adrian's house was quiet. His wife had already left for work, and he was downstairs in his office, probably reviewing something that would ruin someone else's day in a much more expensive way. I took a shower. Warm water, shampoo, conditioner. Same steps, same order. Routine mattered. When the rest of your life started to come loose, routine was still something you could hold. When I came downstairs, Adrian looked up from his laptop. He's called my office twice already, he said. Of course he had. He leave a message? Adrian gave a small, dry smile. Several. Mostly variations of I think there's been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Of course there has, I said. He misunderstood that I would notice. Adrian nodded toward the coffee machine. Drink something. You'll need to stay sharp. I'm fine. I know you are, he said. That's why you need caffeine instead of adrenaline. Fair enough. I poured myself a cup and leaned against the counter, staring at the steam. Has he been home yet? Adrian asked. I checked my phone. One new message. I'm at the house. Where are you? Right on time. He's there, I said. Adrian didn't respond. He didn't need to. We both knew what that meant. The door opening. The silence. The first flicker that something was wrong. I pictured it anyway. Mason walking in, maybe still adjusting his jacket, phone in hand, already dialing me again. Calling my name. Stepping into the kitchen. Stopping. The papers on the counter. The note. His eyes scanning the room, noticing what was missing. Not everything at once. Just enough. The wrong shoes gone. The wrong side of the closet empty. The wrong kind of quiet. Then the realization. My phone vibrated again. Elena, what is this? Another one. Are you serious right now? Then, divorce papers? I took a slow sip of coffee. Set the cup down. Still didn't respond. Let him sit in it. By 8:03 a.m., the messages had escalated. This is insane. You don't just leave like this. We need to talk before you do something stupid. That one made me pause. Not because it hurt, because it told me exactly where his head was. He still thought this was impulsive, emotional, temporary, a mistake. I picked up my phone and typed one sentence. Your signature on this prenup suggests otherwise. I hit send. The phone rang immediately. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Speaker on. Adrian leaned back in his chair across the kitchen, silent, listening. Mason, I said. No softness, no greeting, just his name. You set me up, he snapped. There it was. Not denial, not confusion. Blame. I set you up? Don't play dumb, Elena. You knew Howard would call. You knew. How did I know you weren't at the conference? Silence. A crack. Small, but real. You're twisting this, he said quickly. I needed a break. That's all. A mental health break. The job is... At the Rosewood Hotel? Another pause. Longer this time. With who? I asked. I was alone, Mason said too quickly. I just needed space to think. About us. About us. Yes. The same us you needed to think about using our shared credit card? I can explain that. Please do. He exhaled sharply, like I was the unreasonable one. I didn't think it mattered which card I used. I was going to move the money later. Under the name K. Patterson? That landed hard. How did you... You used our card, Mason. Silence. You didn't even bother to check the statement. That's not... Who is she? The question hung there. Heavy. Final. He didn't answer. Didn't even rush into a lie this time. Mason, I said quietly. Say her name. Say it. Lauren. There it was. Soft. Reluctant. Real. I closed my eyes for a second, not because it hurt more than anything else, but because it confirmed what I already knew. There's a strange kind of peace in that. When suspicion becomes fact, the mind stops spinning. How long? I asked. It's not what you think. That's not an answer. It just happened. Things don't just happen for 3 days at a hotel 40 minutes from home. Silence again. Then he tried a new angle. You've been distant. There it was. The pivot. The justification. The attempt to rewrite cause and effect. You've been focused on work, on the house, on everything except us. I felt like I didn't matter anymore. I let him talk. Not because I cared. Because I wanted to hear how far he would take it. So you lied to your boss, I said slowly. Told me you were at a conference, checked into a hotel with another woman, and somehow this is about me being busy? You're twisting it. No, I said. I'm simplifying it. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Yes. Okay. I nodded to myself. Then explain it to the judge. I hung up. The silence in the kitchen came back instantly. Cleaner this time. Adrian finally spoke. Lauren, he said. Lauren, I confirmed. He shook his head. He really thought you wouldn't check. He didn't think I'd care enough to. That was the truth. More than anything else. I picked up my coffee again, but it had gone cold. I didn't bother reheating it. Instead, I reached for my phone. New messages were already coming in. Please don't do this. We can fix it. It didn't mean anything. Then, I love you. I stared at that one longer than I should have. Not because I believed it. Because I was trying to remember the last time it had felt true. I couldn't, and that told me everything I needed to know. I didn't block Mason. Not yet. Sometimes the smarter move is to leave the line open just long enough for someone to keep exposing themselves. By noon, he had sent another 14 messages. The anger had faded. Desperation was taking over. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. She doesn't matter. You're the one I want. That last one sat on my screen longer than the others. Not because it moved me. Because it revealed him. He didn't want me. He wanted stability. Routine. A house that was already paid for. A life that didn't require him to start from zero. I had been convenience dressed up as commitment. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email. Adrian had forwarded me a folder labeled for review. Inside were the beginnings of a case. Hotel charge confirmations, timestamps, a preliminary draft of the filing. Clean, efficient, detached. I read through it once, slowly, then closed my laptop. There was nothing emotional left to process, only logistics. At 2:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But by then, I was already in a different mode. Watching. Collecting. I picked up. Hello? A woman's voice answered. Calm, controlled, but with something sharp underneath. Is this Elena? Yes. A brief pause. My name is Lauren. I didn't recognize it immediately. I think we need to talk, she said. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. About Mason? A quiet exhale came through the line. Yes. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. Who are you? This time there was no hesitation. I'm the woman he's been seeing. Silence filled the space between us, but it wasn't awkward. It felt precise, measured, like we were standing on opposite sides of the same truth, finally looking at each other clearly. I figured, I said. I didn't, she replied. That got my attention. What do you mean? I mean, I didn't know about you. Not the way you exist. Not like this. There it was. The first real crack in the version Mason had built for both of us. What did he tell you? That you and he were basically over. That you were living together out of convenience. That the marriage was dead. Of course he had. Clean. Simple. Convenient. A story that made him look like a man halfway out the door instead of one sneaking through it. And the hotel? I thought it was just us getting away, she said quietly. I closed my eyes for a second. Not out of pain. Out of confirmation. How long? 6 months. 6. Not a mistake. Not a slip. A pattern. I let that settle. 6 months of lies stacked on top of each other until they looked like something solid. Why are you calling me? Because I found out about you last night. That tracked. Right after he walked into the house. Right after things started collapsing. How? I saw your name on his phone. The calls, the messages. Then I checked his laptop. I could almost see it. The moment she realized she wasn't the only one. Same cold clarity. Different room. Same man. And I didn't like what I found. There was a sharper edge in her voice now. Not for me. For him. He's been lying to both of us, she said. About everything. I let out a slow breath. Yes, I said, he has. Another pause. This one felt different. Less guarded. More aligned. I have proof, she said. That made me straighten. What kind of proof? Messages, reservations, dates, photos. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She understood. I think we should meet, she said carefully. Most people would hesitate there. Pride. Humiliation. Instinct. But I wasn't operating on pride anymore. I was operating on clarity. Where? A small exhale. Relief, maybe. Coffee shop on 8th, tomorrow morning. Okay. We ended the call without saying goodbye. No need. The next step had already been decided. That evening, Mason showed up at Adrian's house. Of course he did. People like him do not respect boundaries until they are forced to. Adrian answered the door. I stayed in the kitchen, out of sight, but close enough to hear. Mason, Adrian said evenly. Where is she? Mason demanded. Not here for you. I need to talk to her. You had your chance. This is between me and Elena. No, Adrian said calmly. It stopped being just between you two the moment you involved another woman and a hotel. There was a pause. Then Mason lowered his voice and tried a different tactic. Look, I messed up. I know that. But this is being blown out of proportion. She's not thinking straight. I almost laughed. That was his narrative now. She's thinking very clearly, Adrian replied. I just need 5 minutes. No. Another beat. Then I'll go to her work. A beat after that. And I'll make a scene if I have to. There it was. The entitlement. The escalation. Adrian didn't raise his voice. Didn't step back. He just said, try it. Something in his tone must have landed because Mason didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Less confident. More uncertain. She's really going through with this? Adrian didn't answer. He didn't have to. A few seconds later, I heard the front door open. Then close. And just like that, Mason was outside. For the first time since this started, he wasn't driving the story. He was reacting to it. I walked into the hallway. Adrian glanced at me. You okay? I nodded. Yes. And I meant it. Because for the first time, I wasn't dealing with suspicion anymore. I was dealing with evidence. And the next morning, I was going to see all of it. I met Lauren the next morning. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just a quiet decision made the night before and followed through exactly as planned. The cafe on 8th was half full when I walked in. Morning light. Low conversation. Cups striking ceramic. Ordinary. That was what struck me most. How ordinary everything still looked, as if the world had no idea anything had collapsed. Lauren was already there. Window seat. Back straight. Hands wrapped around a coffee she hadn't touched. She looked up when I approached. There was something in her face I recognized immediately. Not hostility. Not guilt. Recognition. Hi, she said. Hi. I sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need introductions. We already knew exactly who the other was. Lauren reached into her bag first. No build-up. No speech. Just action. She placed her phone on the table, unlocked it, and slid it toward me. Start there. I picked it up. Scrolled. Messages. Hundreds of them. Mason's name at the top. I didn't read every line. I didn't need to. Patterns show themselves quickly. Pet names. Inside jokes. Plans. Dates. Then hotel bookings. Different ones. Not just the Rosewood. 3 others. Different dates. Different excuses. Conference. Work trip. Late meeting. 6 months. Exactly like she said. I set the phone down slowly, carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. He told me you were basically out of the picture, Lauren said quietly. I wasn't. I know that now. I really looked at her then. She didn't look like someone trying to win. She looked like someone who had already lost something she didn't realize she was gambling. What did he tell you about himself? Lauren let out a short breath. That he was moving up at work. That this conference was a big deal. That he was building something. I almost smiled. Was he? No. Simple. Flat. True. She leaned back slightly. I checked his LinkedIn last night. And? He's been in the same position for 3 years. Of course he had. Confidence without substance. Performance over reality. What about me? Lauren hesitated, then answered anyway. He said you were controlling. There it was. I nodded once. What else? That you handled all the money. That he didn't really have access to anything. That you were distant. Cold. I held her gaze. Did that match what you saw? She shook her head immediately. No. Then why believe it? Lauren didn't answer at once. Because there was no good answer. Lies don't need to be perfect. They just need to be useful. He made it sound like he was trapped, she said finally. Like he needed a way out. And you were it. A small pause. Yes. We sat there quietly for a moment. 2 women. Same man. Same story. Different versions of the same manipulation. Lauren reached into her bag again and pulled out a thin folder. Paper this time. Physical. Intentional. I printed everything. Of course she did. Photos. Receipts. Call logs. Time-stamped screenshots. There was even one image of them outside the Rosewood. Laughing. Close. Comfortable. I looked at it for 3 seconds. Then closed the folder. I don't need more. Lauren nodded. I figured. Another pause. Then she asked, what are you going to do? I already filed. That surprised her. You didn't wait? No. For him to explain? He already did. That landed. She let out a quiet laugh, not amused, just understanding. He tried to call me this morning, she said. Did you answer? No. Good. That silence felt lighter, cleaner. There was no uncertainty left now, only consequence. When I left the cafe, my phone was already buzzing. Mason, again. I answered this time. Not because I wanted to talk, because I wanted to finish it. Elena, thank God, I've been trying to. I met Lauren. Silence. Complete. Like I had cut the power. What? I met Lauren. Another pause. Then, that's not... She showed me everything. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand. No, I said calmly. You don't. His voice changed. Desperate now. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. 6 months, I said. 4 hotels. Hundreds of messages. That's a lot of nothing. You're exaggerating. I'm documenting. That stopped him for a second. Elena, please, we can fix this. No. It was a mistake. It was a pattern. He went quiet again. No new angle. No better story. Just the same one collapsing under its own weight. I love you, he said finally. I closed my eyes for half a second. Not because it hurt. Because it was so late. You should have thought about that 6 months ago. I hung up. And this time I blocked him. By the afternoon, things started unraveling faster. His job was the first crack. Howard called me again. Not as a supervisor this time. Just as a man trying to understand what had exploded inside his team. Elena, I won't ask for details, but HR is involved now. Okay. There were reports. People saw him out during the days he claimed to be sick. Of course they did. Sloppy. Always sloppy in the end. We're handling it internally, he added. But it doesn't look good. It shouldn't. A pause. Then, I'm sorry. For what? For whatever part of this situation involved our company. We should have caught it sooner. I almost smiled. You didn't do anything wrong, I said. And I meant it. Because this was never really about the job. It was about choices. Repeated. Deliberate. That evening, Adrian updated me. He's called my office 9 times. I believe it. He's asking if we can pause the filing. No. I told him that. Good. He also mentioned he might contest the terms. I raised an eyebrow. On what grounds? Emotional distress. I laughed once. Short. Controlled. Of course. Adrian didn't smile. He's running out of options. Then he should get used to that feeling. I stood there for a second, then nodded. This was the point where it shifted. From discovery to consequence. And Mason was finally starting to feel it. By the next morning, Mason had lost control of the story. And when people like him lose control, they don't get quieter. They get louder. It started with a post. Long. Emotional. Carefully written to sound unfiltered. A screenshot sent to me by one of my coworkers before I even saw it myself. Sometimes you don't realize you're in a toxic relationship until you finally step outside of it. I didn't need to read the rest. I already knew the script. He was the victim now. I opened it anyway. Scrolled. He wrote about feeling emotionally neglected, about being controlled financially, about finally finding the courage to step away from something that had been draining him for years. There was no mention of hotels, no mention of lies, no mention of Lauren, just vague language, carefully shaped so other people could fill in the blanks for him. I closed the app and set my phone down. I didn't respond, because responding would give it weight. And lies grow when they are fed. By noon, Adrian had already seen it. He's building a narrative, he said, scrolling through his own phone. I figured, let him. Everything he posts becomes evidence. That was the part Mason didn't understand. He thought visibility gave him power. He didn't realize it also created a record. By early afternoon, things escalated. Not online. In person. My receptionist called first. Elena, there's a woman here asking for you. I already knew who it was. Description? Mid-50s, very intense. Of course. Send her away. She's not leaving. I stood up slowly. Call security. A pause. Then, she says she's your mother-in-law. I almost smiled. Still technically true. Still unwelcome. No, I said calmly. I walked to the front window instead of going downstairs. There she was. Patricia. Mason's mother. Standing at the entrance like she had every right to be there. Arms crossed. Face tight. Already performing. Two people passing by had slowed down to watch. Drama likes an audience. Security arrived within minutes. Short conversation. Firm. Professional. She argued. Pointed. Raised her voice. But eventually she left, not because she accepted it, but because she had no choice. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Unknown number, I answered. What? No greeting. No patience. This is Patricia, she snapped. What do you think you're doing to my son? There it was. Not concern. Accusation. I'm correcting a mistake. You're destroying his life over a misunderstanding. 6 months isn't a misunderstanding. You don't know the full story. I know enough. She let out a sharp laugh. You think you're so perfect, so cold and calculated. No wonder he looked elsewhere. There it was again. The justification. Repackaged. Passed down. He didn't look, I said evenly. He planned. Silence. Just for a second. Then louder. You're going to regret this. Do you hear me? Women like you always do. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear. Not because it was loud. Because it was predictable. Are you done? I'm just getting started. I'm not. I hung up and blocked the number. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Because people like Patricia don't stop. They escalate. By late afternoon, there were 3 more posts. Different tone. More aggressive. More specific. Still no facts. Just implications. Some people use money to control everything. Some people think silence makes them right. Truth always comes out. Adrian forwarded each one to the case file. Methodical. Unbothered. This helps us, he said. Good. Because it did. Every word Mason wrote was another loose thread. And threads, when pulled at the right time, undo everything. The real shift came that night. A message. Not from Mason. From Lauren. He came to my place. I read it once. Then again. Is he there now? No. I didn't let him in. Good. What did he want? A short pause. Then, you. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. Of course he did. When stability disappears, people try to crawl back toward it. My phone buzzed again. He said he made a mistake. That you overreacted. That if you just calmed down, everything could go back to normal. I closed my eyes briefly. Not from emotion. From clarity. He still didn't understand. There was no normal left. What did you say? I told him I'm not interested in being part of whatever this is. I nodded to myself. Good. That closed that door. Another message came through. He looked different. That made me pause. Different how? A few seconds later, smaller. I stared at that word longer than anything else. Because that's what happens when people lose the version of themselves they've been performing. They shrink. Not physically, but in presence. In certainty. In the way they occupy a room. For the first time since this started, Mason wasn't controlling how he was being seen. And he didn't know how to live without that. Later that night, Adrian called me into his office. Sit. I did. He turned his laptop toward me. An email. From Mason. Long. Rambling. Desperate. I'll summarize, Adrian said. Please do. He wants to negotiate. I raised an eyebrow. On what? He's asking for financial support. I let out a quiet breath. Of course. Even now, after everything, he still thought he was entitled to something. To what? The house, partial ownership, or a settlement. I smiled. Not warmly. Based on his contribution to the marriage. There it was, the final attempt. Rewriting value. Turning presence into ownership. Turning access into entitlement. Send him the prenup again. Adrian nodded. Already did. Good. I stood up and started toward the door. Elena. I paused. He's not going to stop easily. I know. He's going to push, publicly, legally, personally. I turned back and looked at him. Then he's going to lose publicly, legally, and personally. Adrian held my gaze for a second, then nodded, because we both knew this was no longer about emotion. It was about outcome, and Mason had already chosen his. The hearing lasted less than an hour. 7 years reduced to paperwork, timestamps, and a sequence of decisions that no longer needed interpretation. I arrived early, not because I was nervous, because I don't like being rushed when something is ending. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No drama, no raised voices, just structure, order, process. Mason walked in 10 minutes later, and for a second I barely recognized him. Same face, same posture, but something had changed. Lauren was right. He looked smaller, not physically, but in presence. Like the version of himself he relied on had finally collapsed, and there was nothing solid underneath it. He saw me and paused, like he expected something. A reaction, an acknowledgement, a crack. I gave him nothing. Adrian sat beside me, flipping through the file with the same calm precision he had carried since the beginning. Everything's in order, he said quietly. I know. Mason's lawyer arrived a few minutes later. Younger, less certain, already at a disadvantage. Because this wasn't a case you argued your way out of. It was a case you survived, barely. When the judge entered, everyone stood. Routine, procedure, finality. We sat, and it began. Mason's side went first. They tried to frame it the way people always do when facts are against them. Emotional distance, communication problems, a marriage that had been deteriorating for some time. I didn't interrupt, didn't react, because none of that mattered anymore. When Adrian stood, the room changed. Not dramatically, just enough. He didn't speak fast, didn't raise his voice. He just laid everything out. Hotel receipts, dates, locations, credit card statements, the timeline of the conference that never happened. The HR report from Mason's company confirming he had lied about being sick. The messages, the call logs, the attempted access to my accounts, the documented harassment, Patricia's threats, everything, one piece at a time. No embellishment, no speeches, just fact after fact until there was nothing left to hide behind. At one point, Mason's lawyer tried to redirect. Talk about intent. Talk about reconciliation. Talk about emotional impact. The judge stopped him. Let me clarify, she said, looking directly at Mason. Your client misrepresented his location to both his employer and his wife, engaged in a prolonged affair, used shared financial resources to facilitate that affair, and then attempted to reframe the situation as a misunderstanding. Silence. His lawyer didn't answer, because there was no answer. The judge continued. And now he is requesting financial consideration based on his contribution to a marriage he actively undermined? Another silence, longer this time. Mason shifted in his seat. For the first time, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Adrian didn't move. He didn't have to. This was the point where the case stopped being an argument and became a conclusion. The ruling was quick, clean, final. Divorce granted. Assets divided exactly as outlined in the prenup. No entitlement beyond what was individually owned. Legal fees assigned to Mason. Just like that, it was done. No dramatic pause. No closing speech. Just a decision. We stood. The room reset. People started moving. Mason didn't. He stayed where he was for a second longer than necessary, then turned to me. Elena. I stopped and looked at him. For the first time since this started, I really looked. No performance left. No angle. Just a man standing in the exact position his own choices had put him in. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, he said. That almost made me smile. Not because it was funny. Because it was honest. I know, I said. That was the problem. He thought I would hesitate. Forgive. Adjust. Stay. People like him always think the line is further away than it is. Until they cross it. Then it's too late. You didn't even try to fix it, he said. I held his gaze. I did. When? Every time I believed you before this. That landed. He didn't respond. Didn't have anything left. Because that was the truth he couldn't rewrite. I turned and walked out. Didn't look back. Outside, the air felt different. Not lighter. Just clearer. Like something that had been taking up space was finally gone. Adrian caught up to me halfway down the steps. "That's it," he said. "That's it?" He nodded. "Cleanest case I've handled in a while." "I believe it." We stood there for a second. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. One new message. Unknown number. I opened it. Mason. Of course. For what it's worth. I did love you. I stared at it for a moment. Then I typed back. Okay. Nothing else. No punctuation. No emotion. Just acknowledgement. Then I blocked the number. And that was it. No closure speech. No final confrontation. No drawn-out ending. Just a line. And the decision to stop reading anything that came after it. A week later, I got an email from the Rosewood Hotel. Apparently, the charges Mason had put on our card had accumulated enough points for a complimentary weekend stay. I stared at the email for a second, then laughed. Quiet, short, controlled. Because that was the only irony left that actually amused me. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. Not even the collapse. Just the fact that something he tried to hide had ended up paying for something I could actually enjoy. I closed the email, set my phone down, and moved on.